Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel Scholarite. This is a new video in the series of JavaScript for beginners. In the previous video, we have discussed about operators. We understood what operators are, what are the various types of operators, and how we can use them in programming language like JavaScript. This is a new topic of JavaScript, that is data types. We'll understand what data types are, what are the various types in data types, and how we can use them in programming language like JavaScript. So before we begin with data types, we'll understand a basic term that we're using here, that is data. We will have to know what this term data is. If you see around yourself, you're digitally surrounded by data everywhere. The message that you're sending on your WhatsApp is a data. The images that you're uploading on Facebook is a data. The video that you're posting on Instagram is a data. So we are basically surrounded by data everywhere. When we talk about data types, there could be various types of data that we are using. If you are just talking about a name, it can be a string data type, or maybe an age, it can be a number data type. If it's an image, it can be a JPG or a PNG image. If you're uploading a video, it can be a MP4 or FLV. So these are the types of data that we are dealing with. So when we talk about programming language like JavaScript, there are multiple types of data that we have to create, use, and manipulate. The data types in JavaScript are categorized into two broad spectrums. The first is primitive data type and the second is non-primitive or reference data type. So let's begin with primitive data type and try to understand what primitive data type is. The word primitive means basic. What I mean by primitive is these data types are defined by JavaScript. We cannot redeclare them or reuse them in a different form or format. The first type of data type within the primitive section is the type string. When I say string, what I mean is anything that is represented by a set of characters is basically string. It can be name, it can be address, it can be any detail that can be represented in character format. For example, let me consider a basic example here. Let me declare a variable name and assign a value Anirudh to it. So what I basically mean is I have created a variable called name and assigned a value Anirudh to it. So now the data type of name variable is string and its value is Anirudh. Similarly, the next data type is number. If you want to declare or assign any variable to a number or any floating value, then you have to use this particular data type. Consider, let's declare a variable age and let's give it a value 42. Now the variable age has this value 42. This is how you can use variables and assign numbers to it. When we are using numbers, we can also use floating values. Something like let weight equals 45.5. So this is a floating value where you also have decimal values. All these numbers like real numbers or floating numbers are of type numbers in JavaScript. You do not have a separate category. So every digit that you are representing in JavaScript is of the type number. The next primitive data type is Boolean. When I talk about primitive data type Boolean, there are only two values which we can represent in Boolean. The first value is true, the second value is false. When I say true, it is represented by 1 and anything that is false is represented by 0. This is the basic annotation of true and false, and that is how we can define this primitive Boolean data type. The next data type in the chart is undefined. As the name suggests, if any variable is created and it's not initialized, then its value is undefined. Let me explain this with example. Let me create a variable called age and I'm not assigning any value to it. So age is just created and not assigned any value like 40, 30. I've just kept it like that. So when I try to print this age, its response is going to be undefined, and that is because you have not initialized the age variable. So undefined are values that are assigned to any sort of variables that are used in code whose values are not initialized. The next type of data type is null. When I say null, it is basically the assignment value to a variable that is null. It is similar to undefined, but undefined is the initial value that is given to a variable if not assigned a particular value, and null is a value that is given on purpose. Like for example, let's create a age and let's give it a value null. So this null value is given on purpose, and this null value is assigned to the variable age. Whereas if I just declared the variable age and have not assigned it to any value, then its value is going to be undefined. So this is just the difference between null and undefined. And with that explanation, we come to an end to primitive data types. So now let's move to the non-primitive or reference data types. When we talk about non-primitive data types, these data types are user defined, meaning it can be declared by the user and it can have multiple data types within the reference. For example, let's consider the first non-primitive data type, which is object. So it is declared within the curly braces, and you can have multiple type of data types within object, and this follow the key and value pair. So in order to have each value within the curly braces of an object, you have to follow the key and value pair. The key is the reference and value is its initialized value. For example, if I had name and the name is defined as Anirudh P, the name here becomes the key and Anirudh P, which is on the right hand side, becomes the value. So this follows the key and value. Similarly, I can also have another type of data here. Let's consider age to be 50. So now you see I have one data type whose type is a string, and the next data type, which is age, represented by key age, its value is 50, whose data type is a number. So when we say about a reference or non-primitive data types, these are user defined data types and can have any kind of structure. It can have multiple primitive values like string, numbers, Boolean, and they are represented by key and value pair. Similarly to the object, we also have another reference data type of non-primitive, that is array. In order to define an array, we'll have to use the open and close brackets. The open and close brackets can have multiple values of different primitive data types. For example, I can have one value as Anirudh, which is of the type string, and the next value can be 26, which let's consider this is the age, and the next value can be true. So it can have multiple values as part of the array. So array is one such reference data type that we can use, and it's completely user defined, meaning the user has the complete authority of what types of data is present in the array. It can be a string, it can be a number, it can be a Boolean, as you have already seen in this example. With that explanation, we come to an end of data types that are used in JavaScript. Now let's move to VS Code and try to understand each of these data types